week on Vox Pops, we wanted to find out what you think about media monopolies. Should one company manage newspaper outlets, radio broadcasters and television networks? Bass Tadros took to the streets of Perth to find out.
There's a recent reform that's been passed, and this has been one of Australia's largest reforms after 3 decades, and that's the media reform. Does this bill now risk media monopolisation, and could this actually change democracy as we know it in Australia? We're going to take to the city of Perth today and find out what people think about that and what their opinion is if one TV network claims to be the representation of the city. What are your thoughts about media monopolisation, and does it start to risk democracy?
Yeah, definitely. If you've got a monopoly over a certain area, then you've got control of the area. And as a human species, we're very easy to manipulate and to direct in a certain pathway. And if they've got all that power and all that influence with all the right sponsorships behind it, then we will follow that like sheep. Practically, it's very dangerous, like you say, and there's no real control out there. No, who's to say what's true?
I'm really concerned about it because I think the way media is today and the way digitisation is going, it'll never happen. You know, Facebook, Twitter, all that is now the media of today. So, you know, I don't think monopolisation is really going to be an issue anymore at all. So that's my general opinion on it, that the people will have the power anyway on what they want to listen to or what they don't want to listen to.
Well, yes, if you're led to believe that this is something that's fundamentally true when it's repeated not only by the station but by the newspaper. So people will get an idea that this is what is basically true and this is what is happening in the community when it's not true at all. Or there needs to be another point of view.
That's a two-part question. Answer is yes, it is happening, and B, it should not be. The minute any organisation, whether it be a small business or a large corporation, becomes privatised, as in they stop becoming a public organisation in the interest of the public which they serve, in which they actually create their product for, and they basically serve themselves. And once they've taken the focus off the customer and onto themselves, they've lost it. And they basically come about the money and the greed and the global, and basically the domination of the market. The more market piece, the share of the pie that they get, the happier they are. They're not interested in better media or more complete coverage or honest journalism. They're interested in the bottom line. And the bottom line is how much money is in their bank account. They care about nothing else. So the answer is yes.
Up until recently, the government's passed a law that it's actually permissible for a TV station to buy a radio network and a newspaper all in the same territory. Whereas prior to that law being passed, it was actually illegal to have that monopoly. You know?
Yeah, that's right. There was a lot of those laws in place there. I think that could be open slather. I really do, mainly because of the reason I put before, because we don't. You know, not free TV, Foxtel, paid TV, Facebook again. It's so open slather now. If they want to invest in buying more newspapers or more TV stations, more radio stations in the one town, let it be. Let it be, because we'll soon wake up that there's going to be a consensus. Well, we're sort of being fed the same story everywhere. We're smart enough now to wake up to that. So I don't think it's a concern at all.
I would think so, yes, because then they are monopolising and they have control over the audience, the control over the content that they're showing. So I would think so, yes.
Is that something that you think would be good for humanity and for Australia or Perth, or do you think it's a dangerous thing?
I think it's happening all around the world. If you look at America, CNN, and how it's happening in European countries, so more and more media channels are just getting too big. They're controlling everything, that what we do, where we go, what we hear, what we see. So it shouldn't happen, but that's how it's happening around the world.
Like I said before, it is very dangerous for one person to have a monopoly. You look at people like Rupert Murdoch back in the UK, owns everything. And if you've got certain political powers, like, you know, going for elections and you've got one bloke who's in charge of it all, he's going to tell you to vote for the person that he wants you to have. Obviously, they have to promote everyone else, but you can put icing on a cake and you can ignore the other piece of cake. It's very easily to influence us in those sort of ways, and it's dangerous. It's very dangerous in my opinion, and it shouldn't be that way.
Do you think any particular network or TV network has an accurate representation of Perth City?
Because networks are basically pawns themselves. But the owners of the networks, yes, there is a certain amount of groups that basically they're trying to monopolise, and they've already done it. Fairfax, the Melbourne media group, Packers and all that, and you got your Americans, you got you got your Fairchilds and all that. All their billions are invested into the future, and that's media, that's pharmaceuticals, that's government, that's etc. So yeah, absolutely, they control it because they're the ones with the bottom line, and basically it's their agenda, not anyone else's.
From time to time, yes, but these days all information is coming through the web, so no one's actually watching the news, they're just surfing the net.
Yep.
So yeah. It's very hard to say which channel is representative of Perth.
I have more faith in the ABC presentations and the SBS rather than the commercial ones. I think as we get older you tend to get a bit more staid in traditional type news, whereas the other news tends to be a little bit, they're trying to keep up with the trend a bit more. But we really just want straight news, that's what we want, just good honest news. Probably could do with a bit more positive news. I think the negative news, it gets too much of it, the dramatisation of it. I think they should, a bit more positive news would probably go down much better too. A bit more of a balance there.
Bass Tadros for Undercurrent.
The world of communication is a constantly evolving environment, and this can often leave parents at a loss as to how to effectively and properly communicate with their children. WTV reporter Stephanie Acevedo recently attended a seminar aimed at encouraging the development of communication skills and supporting the exchange of thoughts and feelings between parents and children.
It's quite known throughout the ages that most parents struggle to bond with their children in the way they would like to. What if there were a way you could improve this? Today we are here at Kundula Community Centre with Bass Tadros, an international acclaimed and accredited hypnotherapist and relationship coach who helps transform the lives of professionals, couples and families by overcoming their communication and mindset challenges.
For parents that are busy and that find that it's hard to find time to sit and make quality time with their children and with their family and household, what I'd personally say is, as a father and as a husband, not just as a coach or a hypnotherapist, I would say that make the time. Nothing happens in your schedule without you actually putting it into your schedule. So put the time in there. Put time in there for quality time with family. Put time in there for finishing at XYZ hour to be with my wife and my children. Go to the park or go for a walk or create that bonding effect at home and with the family. That is just as important as everything else that you've got in your schedule. I mean, I was a product of harsh discipline, so I'm not going to say that harsh discipline is a bad thing. I grew up in a school where corporal punishment was allowed overseas. I absolutely disliked it, and I can tell you that children don't learn very easily and openly when they're in a defensive state, when they know they're going to be punished or hurt. Whether it's going to be by physical punishment, like corporal punishment, or another form of harsh discipline, the brain actually shuts down. The defensive mechanism of the brain actually almost like goes, nah, I'm tensing up, and doesn't allow it to learn or to be creative. So the best discipline, in my views, is a fair discipline. A discipline of communication. You did this and I've asked you to do that. So how are we going to get that to work next time? Do I need to explain that to you differently? Do we need to have rules written out and printed and put on the fridge? Things like that. And consulting your children is probably the best discipline, I'd say. Some of the strategies that I'd like to share with you tonight and for your audience is for every parent to remember that they were once a child. And my talk tonight is going to be more about people identifying with that inner child, and rather than thinking as a parent, what do I need to do to communicate or connect with my children, find a place within you that actually has a certain level of comfort, or builds a certain level of comfort with the inner child within. And that's a good place to start.
From the conversation tonight, it really makes me I think it will really make me stop and think about how I use my words, and how I'm expressing myself.
One of the strategies would be to work on yourself, and if you have any old self-belief systems that have been put in place due to the way you've been brought up or to your own experiences, for them to be released before you can start something new. For me and my children have already been to one of Bass's talks, and we've already implemented the things that we heard on the talk, and I've been looking into things into personal development before that, and we've already put it into action. So it's much more better than where it was.
A common mistake that parents often make with their children is they underestimate their knowledge. They think, you're young, you don't know this, so I'm going to guard you from it, or I'm going to shelter you from this particular information. And I think what happens with that, parents miss out on the opportunity to actually sharing a truth with their children about that particular topic, and they miss out on the growth that they could have and the bonding that they could have with their children, because their children may have actually already found out something about that topic at school or through friends or online, and they're just asking their parents to see what their parents would tell them. And by parents reacting from a place of trying to shelter or guard them, what could happen is not only do they miss out on that opportunity, the child then could grow up to go, well, my parents never had that talk with me. They never really explained that to me.
And finally tonight we bring you the story of two amazing African Australian women, sisters who are each making their own mark in their respected industries. One is a featured comic book artist, the other is a fashion designer with a recent invitation to New York Fashion Week. Deepika Raj had a chat with the sisters to find out more about their unique creative outlets.
The thriving arts and culture scene in Perth is seeing a rise in artists every single day. Today, I'm here at the Okora residence to meet the Okora sisters. One is a renowned fashion designer who has a label under her own name, and the other a comic book artist with 2 books under her belt. Let's meet them and check it out.
Well, I grew up watching my mom sew, so that's where I also found a passion for it. So when I told her I wanted to be a designer, in Africa, maybe not so possible, but here in Australia, she has always encouraged us to follow our dreams. And when she just saw the response to my design, she just said, why not go for it? So my mom has been very supportive. My dad was a little bit apprehensive at the beginning, but since then, when he has seen that my clothes are now being stocked in boutiques in the US and also in Asia, he's sort of jumped on board. So that has been really great. Of course, my youngest sister, Regina, she's a comic book artist, and she was the only one in our family to take art seriously and study it. So she inspires me and gives me courage to keep on going.
I actually started off because I remember when I was in university, we were going to have a unit that was creating books. And I said, I'm about 20 years old and I haven't really done anything with my life. So I decided that maybe I should get myself some manga paper from online and just start creating my own work. My main character, Miki, was like part half and half. She was half French and half Japanese. Because I realized there's not that much diversity in terms of those kind of books. They're all Asian or they're all Caucasian. So it wasn't really helping, like, I guess, readership-wise. And I remember I actually met a reader that was half Japanese and half French, so that actually added to it. I made sure to mix it both with the mafia and baking because I wanted something sweet, but I also wanted like a fun story to add with it. So I started that and I just kept concepting on days, and my tutor really helped me with that, Paul. And eventually I managed to create my book series, and continuously throughout my degree I was like trying to develop it and trying to make it something more than what it is, and it blew up in those past few years. So far, I've got most of my books which I collect in one volume, which is like 4 chapters each. So I've got 2 books out, but I actually release them chapter by chapter. So it's kind of a mixture of an American comic publishing and also Japanese publishing. So I kind of tend to do that, and I always sell them at Tokyo Underground, and they've been so supportive with all of them.
What used to be my interest come out to surface in my children, and differently. For example, from primary school, I could tell with us that had talent in all our school assignments. she would really present them in such beautiful attire, She would draw pictures next to her assignments, and she always got stars from her teacher because of that. When Jean came, and I couldn't believe to see that the kind of art she was gravitating towards was comics. And back in Africa, I really loved comics. I always looked at these old magazines and went to the comic pages, but it is something I never discussed with my children. Now to see that one of them was really talented in comics, I couldn't believe. And so they just went to school like ordinary children. And each of those talents, they just kept maintaining them. All I needed to do was get them whatever they needed, the equipment, the pencils and, papers for drawing, and just encourage them.
But locally, it's really been the people. They've been so supportive. My models they've followed me, my entire career, as short as it is, and they're 100% behind me. So that has been really great, just to see that within Australia there is so much local support from people, from the media. Yeah.
A lot of things that my tutor asked me was that, do you see anybody else in Perth doing what you're doing? And in that way, she wanted to encourage me to also seek a different career. But I say that's the reason why I'm doing it, because nobody else is doing it. How can somebody not do anything and expect something to grow out of it?
This is Deepika Raj signing off for Undercurrent.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Undercurrent. We've really loved having your company, and we hope we'll see you again next week. In the meantime, please leave any feedback or questions that you have for us on any of our social media pages. See you next time.